Punch-Out is one of my favorite game series of all time, and I know I'm not alone. This series is renowned for its innovative gameplay that makes each fight equal parts solving a puzzle and having the reflexes necessary to react to what your opponent is doing. Despite its massive popularity and dedicated community of fans, there have only been 3 home console Punch-Out games. Each one is absolutely phenomenal. The last entry came out in 2009 for the Nintendo Wii. In my opinion, it's the greatest Punch-Out game ever and easily in my top 5 favorite games of all time. For whatever reason, Nintendo is not giving us a new Punch-Out. In many cases, when a beloved series lies dormant, fan communities take up the mantle to fill that void. We see this manifest in everything from fan projects to ROM hacks and indie games that emulate and in many cases surpass the original source material. But for whatever reason, we don't have a ton of great Punch-Out clones. Sure, you could find a list of Punch-Out style games on the internet, but many times these are just boxing games with an over-the-shoulder view that maybe has a main character who's transparent or made out of a grid. But just being behind the back boxing game does not make you a Punch-Out clone. Punch-Out has a very specific feel of dodging, counterattacking, and learning all sorts of crazy patterns before you could be successful. I did manage to find a few good ones though, and I'll present a few of them to you right now. But before I do, let's take a second to talk about Power Punch 2. If you're a fan of Punch-Out, you've probably heard of this game. It originally started as a sequel to Punch-Out with a fairly interesting premise. You would have potentially played as Mike Tyson. After proving he was the greatest fighter on Earth, he then goes into outer space to fight aliens and prove he is the greatest warrior in the galaxy. The gameplay was absolute trash, so between that and Mike Tyson's legal troubles, Nintendo pulled the license and it was just simply released as Power Punch 2, a completely horrific game which did almost nothing right. Despite how bad this game was, it did have an interesting concept. The idea of Mike Tyson going into outer space to fight aliens was pretty cool in theory, which brings me to the first game on our list. Thunder Ray takes that concept and makes it into a good game. You play as the world heavyweight champion, who gets switched off into outer space and is forced to fight for his life among all sorts of robots, aliens, and wizards. The first thing you'll notice about this game are the beautiful graphics. This is a really beautiful game with large, detailed, and well-animated characters. The character designs here are fantastic overall, and the theme of fighting non-humans leads to some pretty creative fights. I won't spoil them here, but one of my favorites was against a magician. She surrounds herself with a force field that you have to just keep punching as you dodge her magical attacks. Eventually the shield breaks, allowing you to hit her and do damage. It's a really cool fight, and unlike anything that we've ever seen in Punch-Out. The game does have its own rhythm. Punch-Out is most popular for its dodge and counter-punch mechanic, where you dodge a punch and then you get a bunch of free hits on your opponent as they stand there with a dumb look on their face. It is one of the most satisfying elements of that game, and when I first started playing this, I was disappointed that it didn't really work like that. Sure, successful dodges will usually let you sneak in a punch or two, but the characters here do not have that long stun animation that fans of Punch-Out are used to. Instead, you are constantly on the offensive. Your enemies do not have an iron guard, and if you keep punching, you will land hits as long as you mix up your attacks. There is also no downside to constantly attacking, as this game does not have a stamina system like Punch-Out. This does lead to an increased tension in many of the fights. As a big fan of Punch-Out, it is totally okay to just dodge and counter, but that is not viable here. You have to be constantly on the attack to be successful, but you also can't be too greedy. You cannot interrupt one of your punches with a dodge. You have to know when to pause, forcing you to not only learn their enemy attacks, but also their rhythm, so you know when to pull back for a moment. In addition, punching also builds your super meter. You have a 3-level super bar in this game. Not at first, but as you progress, you get new super attacks. Think of like the meter in the Street Fighter Alpha series. A fully charged special will take off a ton of enemy health, but landing these is not always so clear-cut. The enemies can block and dodge them, and there's little to no stuns for them, so it's not as simple as just dodging and using your super. Figuring out when to land one of these is going to be key to victory against the later opponents. 3 knockdowns gets you a win, but the enemies get increasingly harder each time they hit the mat. The third phase can get crazy, with enemies having new attacks and throwing everything they have at you. I tended to save my super for this phase, because I definitely could not always keep up. Another thing to help is you can recover health when the enemy is knocked down by mashing the buttons. Your life bar refills, but unlike Punch-Out, you don't just get a sliver back, and mashing quick enough can refill your whole life bar, really giving you a fighting chance. There's also this really annoying mechanic where your health gets too low, it can recover slowly in the ring, but this camera zooms in so close it becomes nearly impossible to dodge attacks. Overall, Thunder Ray is a solid game. It plays different enough to not just feel like a clone, but has enough similarities to please fans of Punch-Out! If Thunder Ray is the prettiest game on this list, our next game, Billion Beat, is definitely the ugliest. That's not to say that it has bad graphics. In fact, the game has good graphics, with very large detailed sprites and a really eye-popping color palette. I just mean the characters here are hideous. Just look at that. What the heck are they supposed to be? The sprite work here is actually difficult to look at, but buried underneath the gross character designs is a really good and difficult Punch-Out! Style game. The gameplay follows the same formula that most games on this list do. Dodge, counterpunch, learn patterns, etc. But there's a lot here that is done really well, and some things that set it apart from other games in this style. The first couple of fights are really easy. Enemy attacks are slow, well telegraphed, and you can dodge in any direction to avoid them. As the game progresses, you have to pay much closer attention. Dodging the right way, knowing when to block and duck all become crucial for success. Enemy attacks also become much more varied, and if enemies attack you in combos, with weapons, magic, and due to the grotesque nature of the characters, even biting, scratching, and vomiting on you. Learning the patterns of later enemies is tough, and I have found myself dying multiple times in some of the later fights. To make it even more difficult, their patterns get more intense with each knockdown, meaning just when you think you have it figured out, the enemy starts throwing all new attacks at you and you're back at square one. There are a ton of cool details and extras in this game. Probably too much to go over here, but you get stuff like bruises that appear on enemies in real time, items you can knock off enemies that change the amount of damage they take, upgrades that you could apply to your character, and special items that you can eat between rounds to restore some health, and other bonuses, just to name a few. There is also a ton of replay here. You get 3 difficulty options, 3 challenges to complete with each opponent, kind of like what Wii Punch-Out! Did, and a total of 12 opponents split across 3 circuits. To add even more challenge, in order to truly beat a circuit, you must complete a tournament that has you fighting all those opponents back to back. Lose once, and you lose the tournament. Billion Beat is a brilliant game. I didn't really know what to make of it at first. The character design was a bit off-putting, I didn't really get it, but the more I played it, the more I got into it, and I really found myself enjoying the intense challenge presented, and even eventually came to appreciate those hideous character models. Creepy Brawlers is a fun Punch-Out! Clone that most fits with the NES style, and it actually could be played on an NES cart, produced by Mega Cat Studios. Of course, if you don't have an original Nintendo, there are plenty of other ways to play it. It sells for $5 on the Switch eShop. It could also be purchased on the Evercade as part of Mega Cat Collection 1. In this game, you play as a dude who gets sucked into horror movies, and the only way out is to battle a bunch of classic monsters in a Punch-Out! Style brawl. As a big fan of horror movies, I really appreciate the cast here. You get everyone from a vampire to a werewolf, Frankenstein's monster, and more. Like any good Punch-Out! Game, it's all about learning your enemy attacks, how to avoid them, and when to counterpunch. One unique feature in this game is, after a successful dodge, sometimes your fist lights up, indicating that now you can counter, and you do so with an extra powerful attack, kind of like a star punch. Not only are these satisfying to land, but they also become crucial in the later fights. Not every attack can be counterpunched, and sometimes enemies attack in long combo strings, so the glowing fist is key to know when it's time to go on the offense. Like Punch-Out!, there are also multiple circuits, and you will sometimes see the same enemy in a later circuit, just like how you had to fight Bald Bull twice, for example. And just like Punch-Out!, the second time you face them, they are stronger with more attacks, and in some cases even have a different look. The sound effects here are pretty weak, and the punches you land don't give you the same satisfaction that Punch-Out! Does. Still, weak sound effects aside, this is a great time. If this game came out when I was a kid, I definitely would have enjoyed it. It's not in the same league as Punch-Out!, but I'd rather play this than any other boxing game on the NES, and given its cheap price, it's definitely worth checking out. Pato Boc is a super unique game and probably my favorite on this list. You play as a Duckman, and unlike most Punch-Out! Clones, there are these third-person adventure segments preceding each fight. The first level starts out simple enough. You are in an office base, and there are people to talk to and various rooms to explore. At the end of each level, you fight a boss, and it is here that we see the game's Punch-Out inspirations. More on that in a second. In between fights, you play from behind the shoulder view and explore a variety of locales as the story unfolds. These segments are actually pretty fun, as they flesh out the world, and each level has some kind of hook. So for example, one level has you navigating conveyor belts, trying to avoid saws and other traps, while another has you trapped in a maze with a mutant duck, kind of like a duck version of Nemesis, who instantly kills you if he catches you, so you just have to run away until you can find the exit. At the end of each level, you find the boss, and when you counter them, the game switches to a Punch-Out style of play. One of the things that sets this game apart, though, is that your fights are not confined to a boxing ring, and the dynamic environments you fight in lead to some really cool battles that would not be possible in a traditional boxing game. I won't spoil all the fights here, but one of my favorites has you fighting against a chef in his kitchen. His moves are really quick, like impossibly quick. There is just no way to react to his strike. It just seems impossible. Until you notice his little crab friend hanging out next to him. The crab telegraphs his moves, so the key to dodging his attacks lies in watching the little crab. When the crab swings, you know it's time to dodge. As the fight progresses, he gets harder to hit, and food begins to drop near his pot along with some other items like rats and socks. The key is to grab the food items and throw them into the stew, and then when he just can't resist anymore, he starts to eat, and you can just start pounding on him. This was such a cool fight, and there's a lot of this in the game. It really makes it stand out among the other games on the list, and even Punch-Out itself. The controls here are what you'd expect. They're responsive, and all your hits have a nice impact. It is the same satisfying crunch that you'd want from any good boxing game. All the bosses have some kind of trick or gimmick, and they are just so unorthodox. It's not as simple as, oh, this is a Bald Bull clone or something like that. My only complaint on this game, I just wish it was longer. There are only about 7 total fighters, and after you beat the game, you could play in arcade mode where you could just do the fights and avoid the adventure mode, but the adventure mode is fun enough that it's something you should explore at least once. The other thing is the last boss is kind of weird. Fighting him is not the same as every other enemy. Instead of switching to a Punch-Out mode, you remain in third person mode and you kind of just walk around circle strafing, punching him as you go. It was okay, but the game raised the bar really high in the other fights and just kind of dropped the ball in the last one. Despite the weak last boss, this is just a phenomenal game. Its unique visual style, adventure mode elements, and unorthodox opponents really set it apart and make it well worth your time. Bare Knuckle Sandwich, like Pato Boc, has some story elements interwoven into gameplay. You play as Gunner, a young man who is kind of lost in his life and looking for some meaning. He stumbles upon a back alley boxing ring and starts to train in order to find some meaning in his life. The adventure elements take place in a side-scrolling world where you walk around, talk to characters, and play games to earn money for cosmetic upgrades. These mini-games are all centered around the mouse, and there is no controller support here. I am terrible with keyboard and mouse controls, so I had to use Joy to Key in order to make my controller workable. However, it made the mini-games completely unplayable for me. It doesn't really matter since they are all optional anyway, but they are used to earn money to buy cosmetic items. I enjoyed the story here. It was a nice vehicle to give the fights a little more meaning. The fights here take place just like Punch-Out, only instead of in Major League Boxing setting, you are in a back alley gym in a setting more like Pit Fighter. The fighting is well done. It has the basics of Punch-Out. You dodge and counter. A successful counter puts stars above your opponent's head. But the twist is you must counter in the opposite way you dodge. So a left dodge followed by a left punch usually does not trigger their stun state. The direction you dodge matters, and going the wrong way means you take damage. The knockdown system is different here also. You get 1 knockdown and it's game over. You only need to drain 2 life bars to defeat each opponent, as opposed to the standard 3 TKOs you typically see in these games. The opponents are surprisingly creative. You get some basic thugs and douchebags, and I mean that literally. One guy you fight is just named Douche, and there's some really colorful variety here, like an anime fan who goes Super Saiyan after you drain his first life bar. I died a few times on most fights, but none of them felt too difficult once you get the hang of how your opponent fights. Overall, this was a great time. It's very unique in its story and presentation, but still manages to capture what makes Punch-Out so much fun. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. There are so many amazing games out there that fly under the radar. I release a video every 2 weeks trying to highlight some of these games. If there is a genre of game you want me to cover, leave a comment down below. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos and any more hidden gems.